Video games deliver amazing stories in a way unlike any other medium, and every other year they'll leave us with memorable moments that stick with us long after we put the game down. And just like every January, we're going to look back at our favorite stuff from the last year, meaning today we're counting down our top 10 favorite moments from video games from 2018. Now, before we get to the actual top 10, we of course have a couple of ground rules to go over, and the first one is that these are moments from actual games. Not news stories about games, not big trailer reveals, not an announcement about a character being in a game that blew all of our minds. No, these are actual moments typically tied to the stories of games that came out in 2018. So, sorry, ongoing soap opera that is the Fallout 76 situation, you and your collector's edition bags are not part of this. Also, I'm only going to include one moment per game, because if I started doubling up, then this entire list would be probably the same 3 games over and over again. And lastly, before we begin, just to warn everyone, there are going to be a ton of spoilers in here, so before every entry, I will tell you the game I'm going to talk about, and if you want to skip that so that you don't spoil yourself on anything, I will tell you the time to jump to. Alright, everyone understand? Now, speaking of spoilers, here's a few incredibly vague honorable mentions. The end of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Oh man, when revealed, ooh boy, that was a game changer, wasn't it? The end of A Way Out. Wow, I can't believe you had to with, it was so emotional. Mission number in Valkyria Chronicles 4. Yeah, there's no way to even hint at that one without giving something away. But okay, enough incredibly vague honorable mentions, time to get into the actual number 10 spot. Number 10 from Call of Cthulhu, Cthulhu Awakens. Many horror gamers this year were looking forward to Call of Cthulhu, and when it was finally released, it was met with a wave of it's alright. You know, it's fine, I guess. It wasn't a bad game, but many people complained that it was rather slow and a bit dull, especially in the beginning. But at the end of the game, you are presented with a choice, and depending on what you choose, you can actually awaken the Ancient One itself, Cthulhu, to bring about the end of the world. Now, I have no idea why you would actually want to do that. Seems like the goal of most games is to not bring about the end of the world. But needless to say, the big squid-faced god is kind of a big deal. He's kind of the first name in ancient unspeakable terror for many people who picked up this game. So if you were actually going to summon him, you'd need to make it big. You'd need to make it worth all that build-up. You would need to make it truly an epic, memorable moment. Welp, I for one am sold. That sure did kind of knock my socks off a little bit. And it was made even more effective by the fact that if you choose this path, then you get a post-credits scene where you and your fellow men are just beating the crap out of each other, letting you know, oh yeah, I actually did bring about the end of the world, and there is no good ending coming after this. We're all just kind of screwed. I'm not saying it made the game worth the price of admission, but it did deliver on the thing that I think a lot of Call of Cthulhu fans were kind of waiting on at the end of this. Number 9, from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, you are Master Hand. When we started up Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's World of Light mode, we thought, okay, this will be a good 5 hours or so just to kill some time. Little did we know it would clock in at over 6 times that length, as we had to go through different worlds and battle crazy powered up opponents and bosses and solve all kinds of twisting puzzles around this huge maze of a map, all leading up to the big climactic finale where you had to face off against Masahiro Sakurai's deep personal inner struggles between fandoms and corporations. Or I don't know, whatever the big giant light and dark tentacle monsters were. It's actually incredibly vague. But towards the very end of the campaign, if you did everything right, then you would awaken the true ending path by freeing Master Hand and Crazy Hand, the two bosses we've fought against since the start of this franchise. The two of them come together to open up the true path by literally breaking open a hole in the board. And I thought, alright, the two bosses from the previous games coming together to help you out, that's pretty cool. That's actually something that I should applaud. Little did I know that as soon as you go down that path, you then enter a battle against a horde of clone fighters where you would actually get to play as Master Hand, the big boss you fought against for literally decades at this point, was finally, after all this time, on your side and in your control. To have all his powers at your disposal, and to finally see what it felt like to be this giant, menacing mystery glove, was a moment that hit Smash Bros. Fans hard. And yes, I know that you could play as him if you glitched out the system in Melee. That doesn't count. Number 8, from the missing JJ McField and the Island of Memories, FK Saves the Day. There were many games this year that were about exploring yourself and trying to deal with your own emotional issues, many of which had moments that just hit you right in the feels. Seriously, after this year, I don't need any more feels punches. My feels are officially broken after this year. But one of those games that really hit you hard was the missing JJ McField and the Island of Memories. There are many huge moments in this game that stunned us as we realized what the story was actually about, but eventually we learned that JJ McField was a transgender woman who attempted suicide after her mother found out and was going to send her away to a center where they would basically mentally torture and break her. A very frightening thing that many members of the LGBTQ community face in the real world. The whole game is JJ on a journey between life and death as her body is ripped apart over and over again, but she keeps getting strange text messages from her stuffed animal, FK. She's angry at whoever this imposter is, since clearly it can't be a stuffed animal texting her, so she keeps telling it to leave her alone, keeps trying to reject it. But finally, after hitting her lowest, about to give up on life, FK tells her one last time that this whole journey is about regeneration, about accepting herself as she grows and changes. With this, she's able to gain the courage to fight through the pain and face her inner demons. When she wakes up, the paramedics say that the reason she didn't die after slitting her wrist was all because of one special little guy, FK. She slit her wrist and then hugged him as she bled out, but because she was hugging him, he ended up clogging up the wounds and keeping her alive just long enough for the paramedics to arrive. It's an incredible scene that makes you look back at all those little text messages throughout the game completely differently as you realize this little stuffed animal was actually trying to save your life after all. Seriously, this is like if David Lynch made Toy Story. It's a beautifully weird and touching moment in a beautifully weird and touching game. Number 7, from Detroit Becomes Human, Escaping the Junkyard. Detroit Becomes Human might have divided audiences this year, but there was one scene in particular that pretty much everyone agreed was just really damn impressive from start to finish. After Marcus is attacked by the police, he is disposed of in the junkyard, only for a tiny spark of his life to still be left in him. He struggled to crawl through the wreckage, finding spare parts of other dead androids until he could finally rebuild himself. But as he regains his senses, we see more of this location coming together until we realize he's in hell. That's what the junkyard is for androids. Even though this was just a simple junkyard, an actual real location that any of us could go to, they turned this into one of the best interpretations of hell I've ever seen in a video game. With androids fused into walls reaching out for help, begging for death, wandering around looking for scraps to survive on, it was genuinely creepy. But after you finally rebuild yourself and you're able to climb out of this pit and you're standing there at the top of this mountain, it's almost like a spiritual moment. It really does feel like this character has been reborn. Yes, I know Detroit has massive problems, and I'm sorry that I have to bring that up every single time that I talk about, but moments like this showed that it also had a lot of positives. Number 6 from Gris, Acceptance, the final stage. Gris is a game that doesn't like to make it obvious what it's about. It's a girl with no voice, wandering around a strange, empty world, but as the game goes along, she slowly gains a voice and colors and life start to return to this world. Now, when we played this on Twitch, it didn't take us long to realize this was a game about loss. Someone dealing with the death of someone close to them. And each note and color you gain was one step in the grieving process. And every time that you thought you were making progress, every time you thought it was going to be alright, that darkness, that void, that depression would come right back around. However, at the end of the game, as the darkness tries to swallow you up for good, you sing your song, and you're able to connect with the one that you lost, realizing that even if they're gone, you're going to be okay, and a part of them is still with you. I'll admit that describing it alone doesn't quite sum up the impact of this scene, but I'm begging you, if you're just listening to this video in the background, stop for a second and actually watch this footage, because a large part of why this moment was so amazing was because of how gorgeous this animation was and how it brought every single emotion you were feeling to life right there on the screen. Number 5 from Celeste, Reaching the Mountaintop. As I said, there were several games last year about going on an emotional journey dealing with personal demons, but the champ of these games from last year was Celeste. Madeline is a girl challenging herself to reach the top of Mount Celeste because she has to prove to herself that she is capable of doing it, but she doesn't know that this mountain has the power to bring someone's inner self to life. And since Madeline suffers from depression and anxiety, yeah, this isn't going to be an easy climb. But after almost reaching the top of this next to impossible journey, Madeline is sent all the way back down to the bottom, where she has to finally face her dark inner self. But in the end, she realizes these dark thoughts aren't evil. They're not something to throw away and hide. They're part of her. She can't escape them, and fighting them makes them worse. She has to accept them and let herself be whole. After accepting herself, she sets off again with renewed strength and determination, and in one long final push, she is able to finally, after all this time, reach the top of the mountain. Now, this is a big moment for Madeline because it shows that no matter what she's going through, she has the strength inside to pull through. But it's an even bigger moment for the player because Celeste was one of the hardest games of the year, and after hundreds of deaths, okay, fine, maybe more like 1,000, I'll admit that, you finally did it. You finally reached the end of your journey. And in that moment, you and Madeline were one because the rush of actually being able to achieve this was an accomplishment unlike anything else this year. Number 4, from Monster Prom, the October Holiday Secret Ending. That's right, in a year where every indie game out there was about the journey of the self and confronting personal issues and twisting your heartstrings every step of the way, the highest ranking moment on this list from an indie game comes from a dating sim where you have to hook up with monsters. If you haven't heard me talk about this by now, Monster Prom is great. Go and play it. But for their Halloween update, you know they had to do something good. So they introduced a quest where you use an ancient evil tome to play pranks on all your friends. Only for it to reveal at the end that these pranks were actually helping you to summon a dark god into our dimension to cause the apocalypse. At the end, if you pull off everything in this quest successfully, then you'll get the secret ending where Polly and Scott, the prank masters, with a Z, tell you to get lost as they summon their new prank god to prank the whole planet. It's a fun ending, but Monster Prom's endings are always just that. Fun. Nothing mind-blowing. Until this one, when you realize there is more to this ending than you expected, because normally every single game of Monster Prom ends with the same ending clip. Not this one. The ending to this storyline actually provided me with probably the biggest shock I experienced in any game this year. Don't believe me? Here's the actual clip from Twitch when we got that ending.
Alright.
Bam. Boop, 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 boop. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yay! Just listen to that dope ass music. Actually, wait. I'm gonna have us go out with the Monster Prom music. Oh! Oh no! No!
Oh, wait!
There's more!
Oh!
There's more!
Wait! Stop everything!
Post-credits ending! What the actual There's more here! This doesn't actually normally happen!
So
Listen to the music in the background. It's like just
yeah, it's just wind blowing.
Polly and Scott are the only ones.
Oh my god.
Oh. Yes, if you follow this ending, you actually do cause the end of days and get every single one of your fellow students killed. And they don't just die, you then get treated to a special end-credit sequence with a hip-hop song by Scott and Polly as you actually watch all of your friends being murdered by demons that you helped summon.
We're taking dank pranks all the way to the prank bank, but we needed something new to fill up our prank tank, so we found this book and it really charmed us.
The cover's made of skin, so you know it's harmless.
We opened it up and the word started bleeding.
Way more exciting than regular reading.
Tell me any other game in history that gave you an ending like that. Sorry, Call of Cthulhu, enjoy your spot at number 10. Come back when you have a funky fresh beat to go with your destruction. Monster Prom is a game all about being stunned by what crazy thing a character is going to do next, to expect the unexpected. And even in a game like that, this ending came completely out of left field.
We're the prank masters.
With a Z! Where are all our friends?
Number 3, from Red Dead Redemption 2, Arthur Morgan's Final Ride. Okay, it's going to be really hard after that one to get serious, but here we go. At the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, Arthur Morgan has been diagnosed with tuberculosis, which at first seemed like it came out of nowhere, but eventually you realize, oh no, he actually got that early in this game after he beat a man to death to get a handful of cash off of him. Yeah, Arthur Morgan was not a nice man. But if you go down the honorable path with him, if you play this game trying to make up for the sins of his past and to try and save the other members of your gang, then his journey becomes truly heartbreaking. This man has the law after him, a boss he owes his life to but he knows is going mad and about to get everyone killed, and a disease that will spell the end for him even if everything else works out. And Arthur is human. He isn't going through this as some unflinching machine. You know he's in pain over all this. Heck, in one of the best moments in the entire game, he admits that he's afraid of what's going to happen to him, and you care so much about Arthur in that moment. But in the end, Arthur has to go off and face down Dutch and Micah. He has to try one last time to make all this right. And so he saddles up one last time. And as he travels up the mountain, he hears the voices of those he encountered in this journey, the people who meant the most to him. And this incredible song starts playing in the background that really did make you realize this is the last ride for one of the most amazing characters in video game history.
Thank you, Bella. You know there ain't enough kindness in this world, that's for sure.
Maybe it's a sign, Arthur. Try to do the good thing.
Shine light into darkness.
Number 2, from Marvel's Spider-Man, Spider-Man's Final Decision. Marvel's Spider-Man was one of the most fun action-packed games of the year. We played that thing for hours, loving the characters, the quest. Heck, just traveling around the city was amazing. But towards the final act of this game, this light, fun superhero romp decided it was going to get dark. It started to get so serious that we had to stop and reassure ourselves, hey man, it's Spider-Man, it's going to be okay. I mean, when has Spidey ever had something really traumatic happen to him? Okay, when has he ever had something really traumatic happen to him in a video game? They're not going to do something major here. But then at the end of this game, after Peter has a tormented final exchange with his mentor Doc Ock, he has the only cure for the virus that is sweeping through New York. And they can now replicate this cure in order to save the entire city, but that's going to take time. Time that his sick Aunt May doesn't have. He has to make a choice. Save his aunt or save the city? His Aunt May then reveals that she always knew he was Spider-Man and that she was proud of him, and she knew that he would make the right choice. In that moment, you can see no decision has ever tortured Peter more. Nothing has ever ripped at his heart more than what he has to do now. But even though every fiber of his being told him it was wrong, he left the cure there and was forced to walk away from his aunt. I honestly could not believe they went there. It then cut ahead weeks later as the cure was being passed out to everyone in New York, and I kept telling myself, and Aunt May is going to walk into frame now. Now. Any moment now. Aunt May is still alive and she's going to come out right now. Aunt May is going to bring him a big pile of wheat cakes now. But no, she was actually gone. Aunt May died so that Peter could save the city. This game gave us an ending that left us with our jaws dropped. You might wonder how this beat out Red Dead's moment at number 3, but honestly, it's because as good as that moment was, most people out there kind of realized early on something like this was probably going to happen in this game. Nobody saw this coming. All over the internet, all I heard last year was people saying, I can't believe that happened. And even though several months have gone by, yeah, I still can't believe that happened. And at number 1, from God of War, Kratos' secret in the basement. I've talked all year long about the amazing character dissection in God of War, about how we watched this man who had destroyed a world a lifetime ago because he was consumed by rage, now having to deal with what came next. He built up a new life for himself, trying to hide every horrible thing he had done in his past, never wanting to face it again. But after his wife died, he was lost. She didn't die to anyone or anything that he could go out there and kill or seek revenge on. It was just a thing that happened, and he didn't know how to deal with that pain. And to make matters worse, he now had to take care of a son that he didn't even know how to talk to. He was afraid to show his boy how much he cared about him because of everything that he had already lost in his life, and because it would force him to actually have to confront some of the things that he had done in his past. But when his son became sick, falling into a deep, death-like sleep, Kratos had only one choice. He had to go into the underworld to save him, but he was warned that he wouldn't survive the trip. His axe couldn't hurt the creatures of the underworld. He would need something stronger, something that could slay a god. Kratos knew what he had to do. He boarded a boat and rowed back to his home, where he was forced to retrieve the Blades of Chaos, the weapons he had massacred countless with when he was at his most savage. This was what he had always tried to escape. He had literally buried this secret to try and hide it, but his son needed him. That's what makes this long boat ride so good, because as the camera holds on him in silence, you can see him reliving every horrible memory he had spent a brand new lifetime trying to forget. everything he had to run from, he now had to confront as a storm rolled in the background and he found himself being haunted by the visions of the past. You could feel the darkness creeping up inside Kratos all over again. But he was willing to do this for his son, because even if he couldn't say it, he cared about the boy. This one single silent boat ride brings up all the memories and emotions of the previous games, but it still pushes Kratos forward in his new journey. It shows emotional torment on a level that rivals any other game this year, and at the same time, it still sends a tingle up your spine as you know what's about to come. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in for our top 10 video game moments of 2018. We've only got one more video game retrospective coming up in which we're going to count down our top 10 video games of last year. So if you want to see that, then make sure that you click that subscribe button and ring that bell so that way you don't miss any of our videos. And you can always follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and on Patreon at Professor Thorgy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.